Hey, everybody, how's it going? This is Seth and Jaron. You're listening to the REtipster podcast. Today, we're talking with Callan Faulkner. So, Callan runs a company called REI Optimize, which is a high-end, done-for-you CRM and technology implementer for land investors. And I met Callan earlier this year at a real estate investing conference. And as we were standing around in the same circle, I was just listening in as she was talking about her ideas and experiences. And I kept having all these like, wow moments where it just hit me that like, man, this person really is smart. Like she knows what she's talking about, has some really fascinating ideas, stuff that I don't normally hear in land investing circles. And I thought we got to get her on the podcast and just dig in a little more and find out what she's doing and what's working. And maybe just looking at the whole land investing marketing side of things and management side of things, just I don't know, maybe from some different perspectives that some of us maybe haven't thought of before. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Callan, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So maybe you can just tell us, what is your origin story in the land investing business? When and how did you get into this?
So I started my business with my business partner, John, about 2 years ago, right in the beginning of the pandemic. I had spent the last 10 years, my entire career in the technology space. So I was and still am, a CRM consultant. So for those of you that don't know CRM, that stands for Customer Relationship Management. And I was doing implementations of these big tools that would manage marketing automation, would manage pipelines, would manage kind of customer service, call systems for Fortune 5,000 companies. So automation queen. I am obsessed with automation, time, efficiency. So that was my gig before. Just like most of us, listened to a podcast and had some cash on hand, had some money saved, and knew I wanted to get into real estate. But I am not handy at all. I can barely put my office together. Like picture frames were not hung by me. So I knew that houses were an option. So land it was.
That's awesome. One of the things that I really want to get into on this conversation is leaning on your expertise for insight into like mail pieces and direct mail and getting into marketing. Because I know we're going to probably talk a lot about, really sexy automation stuff that like gets deals while you're sleeping. Or I think a good place for us to start the conversation is going to the epicenter of what all land investors do right now, which is kind of the run of the mill thing of sending out direct mail.
Yep.
So before we started the conversation, one of the things that you said that I thought was very interesting, use the cash flow, is I want to bring land investors into the 21st century, yes. Is what you said.
Yeah.
And I really, really like that. And I want to unpack what that means, but let's do a deep dive on direct mail and direct mail practices for a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know a lot of land investors that I talk to, they just grab their template from whatever camp they came up under and they just put their information on it and send it out. No. What do you think is what people do typically with direct mail that are not good practices, and what are the best practices for direct mail?
Yeah, I have a lot to say. I want to preface the conversation. I feel like I'm like a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a financial advisor. Everything that I'm saying totally depends on where you are in your business. If you are just starting your real estate investing business and you have no idea what market to go into, you're testing different things, use the easiest and cheapest start. Like some of these things I'm going to talk about today, especially as we start talking about CRM and automation and investing in technology, only comes when you have a solid business underneath you. You have maybe one or two people working for you. You have expectations, you have goals, you have a vision, you have process. Like those things take years to develop. So as you're listening to this, I'm sure we are all these entrepreneurs. We're hungry, we're hustlers. We feel like this pressure, like I got to move faster. Just take a breath. All these things are going to be waiting for you. Don't do them too fast because you're not going to be ready. That's my little TED talk there about
Love it.
all these things we're going to talk about. So let's talk about direct mail. In total honesty, we started with kind of a classic education program. We went right into rural, vacant parcels, buying for $1,000, selling for 4,000, doing 5,000 mailers a month, just a classic mailer, normal, pretty much the normal letter that everyone sends. It's the windowed mail. We had a decent response back in 2020, early 2021, but last summer our response significantly dropped off, and we tested a few different markets. I'm hearing the same thing from a lot of other land investors, and that was the biggest push to figure out what other people are doing in other industries. And we can really look to wholesalers, we can look to multifamily, we can look to these commercial investors. My wholesaling house friends were laughing hysterically when I was telling them the mail that we're sending and the money that we're spending. They're like, what are you talking about? You're just sending this junk mail to people and like hoping that they open it? I'm like, 100%, that is exactly what we're doing. Now, I think if you're testing a new market, yeah, do some cheap marketing, like see what works, test the waters. But once you find a market that you know is working, for us, we've got a market that we've been working for 2 years, and we will probably work it for the next 10. Like, we are getting a deal almost every week there.
What's the market? No, just kidding.
Right? Well, everyone knows what it is, actually. Like, every single person that works with me knows what it is, which is kind of funny because I've actually had people reach out and be like, can you help me comp this? I'm like, absolutely not. I've spent 2 years learning this market. Like, this is my baby. But you can sell to me. That's fine. And so we flipped over to texting. We started doing texting last July. Very recently, we've started testing some new mail. So let's talk. We'll go into the whole texting conversation because I think everyone's gonna be really interested about that. But here's what we know about mail. People that you're talking to are getting a ton of mailer. The other thing that's happening is there's a lot of new people coming into the market, and they're testing out their pricing. And oftentimes they're pricing it a little too high. They're pricing it too low. They're putting a number on there. And it oftentimes is creating this, in this decision in the seller's mind of like, well, who are you? What are you doing? How do you know this is my offer? So a couple of things we know for sure. Anything that's handwritten on the outside of an envelope is going to get opened. If I sent you, Seth, a handwritten your name, your address with a pen, and my name, my address with a pen, and here's a trick that it has the stamp of where it came from. So a typical letter, it has like the stamp and it has the location of where the letter was sent from. If it has an actual stamp on it, that letter is way more likely to be opened than something that looks like maybe a bill or a piece of junk mail.
One question on that. When we say handwritten, are we talking about like just a handwritten font? Or are we talking like somebody literally took out a pen and you can see the indentation on the paper?
Literal pen indentation on paper.
Okay, gotcha.
I've recently partnered with a company called Robot Inc. Marketing. I'm working with them to create a package for some land investors. So check my website, REIOptimize.com. But they have created a patented product. It's a machine that actually has the pen writing on the envelope. It's about $1.50 per mailer.
Oof.
So about a little bit more expensive.
That's like double. That's a lot.
But if you have a honey hole, which we do, where we're making $15,000 a deal, and we are getting triple the response rate, what does that mean for your ROI? If we're going to do triple the amount of deals, right now we're doing about 3 or 4 deals a month in this area. If we're going to get that to 6 to 9, it's not even a conversation of whether or not this is work. Now, back to like, is this right for you? If you don't know this area and you don't know how to disposition, you don't know how to sell, you don't have a team, you don't have a great title company, you don't have maybe some boots on the ground to check the property out, this particular mailer might not be right for you. But once you figure out an area and you've sent, I call them kind of the cheaper mailers, you sent maybe some cheaper mailers, maybe you've done some cold calling, maybe you've done some texting, there's still a list of people who have not reached out to you yet. Those are the folks that you're going to send this mailer to. So you're going to start with this list of 10,000, weed them down with the cheap marketing. And if this area is still producing, now I'm going to spend some money.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, I really appreciated how you broke that down at kind of like a high level, but where do you go in terms of like the practicals, like rubber meets the road? Like, do you break down your approach in phases? Because if you're going like cheap marketing, as you say, first, mailing everybody, and then, paying attention to who responded and then removing those from that list, and then using that kind of like consolidated list of people who haven't responded in any capacity with this, using that list for this like handwritten font, robot ink marketing, you said?
Robot ink marketing.
Yeah. So like, do you break down in like phase 1, phase 2? What does it look like practically when you're in the trenches? Like, let's say I'm your student, and I got $3,000 for direct mail, and I have a list of 10,000 records. Where do I go from here?
Yep. That's such a great question, Jaron. Okay, so let's go the cheap route, and then let's do the same example, but let's say you're an experienced land investor and you've got a bigger budget. So cheap, scrappy route. Number one, if you really want to take advantage of a list, you've paid for 10,000 records from Christ or from DataTree, right? You've got all of these land records sitting here. You should put them somewhere. The best option, cheap, easy to get set up, really easy to use, is REI Conversion Pebble. CRM,
Yep.
You can get all your properties uploaded into that system. It's a little bit more work on the data side because you've got to kind of update as you go, but totally worth it. If you're going to spend the money to get this list, I want to know who has reached out to me, who's responded to me, what properties do I not want, and make sure that as you're going, maybe you do a status on the property record, and you just create a little drop down, and it's called, I keep it really simple. It's literally cold, interested, or dead. Those are the 3 options for a property. And as you do your marketing, you just have your virtual assistants, or if it's you, then it's you. Just update, right? Somebody reached out, we looked at the property, it's skinny, no road access, dead. Somebody reached out, we're interested, we're going to move them through the pipeline. Now they're marked as interested. And we just have to always go back and make sure we're updating that property list. Now, let's just say we start, in my recommendation, the cheapest form of marketing is texting. Texting is, you can get a system up for $300 a month. You do have to skip trace your list. I've got a partnership with DirectSkip. They're on my website. They are a skip tracing company. So skip tracing is the act of taking a property owner's information, so their mailing address, their name, the property address. You don't have to have that. Most of us don't for pieces of land. Uploading it into DirectSkip, and then they will give you back that person's phone numbers, plural, email addresses, their age, are they dead or alive, are they on the DNC list, are they a litigator, they're all their relatives' information. I usually get up to like 5-6 relatives. And then you take that information, and I would put that into Pebble as well. I would upload that against the property record because you'll have the APN. And then I would upload that into your texting tool. And this is, again, I could spend a whole hour on just the texting piece. And this is part of what I teach to my clients, this whole process. And I would send that entire list a text message. Super normal. Usually you're only going to get about 60% of the list that actually has a mobile. The other 40% are only going to have a landline, and some are only going to have an address. So if you do send a lot of mail, there's your list right away, right? All of the people that don't have a mobile, maybe that's your mailing list right away. And then the 60% that have a mobile, let's try and reach them via text message. Ask them if they're the owner of the property. Would they consider an offer on their lot? Try to get them to respond. I could go into tons of details on text strategy and whatnot, but starting with texting, and then in most texting tools, you can do an export of people that did respond, and you can upload, again, anytime you upload into Pebble, you can match on the APN and just update that list. These are all the people that responded. And then after a couple months, you'll be whittling that list down. And then now it's time for the next form of marketing.
And so that's phase 1.
Yep.
I've got some just nuts and bolts questions about the texting thing. So this is something that I've heard people talk about, but when I hear people talk about it, it's like, does it work? It's not, this works and this is how I do it. So I'm really interested just to find out how this is working for you and sort of the pros and cons of going this route.
Yeah.
And actually just to clarify, I know we've spent the first few minutes talking about direct mail, and now we're talking about texting. Are you saying texting should be done in addition to direct mail or instead of direct mail? And which comes first?
Absolutely. In my opinion, and this is, everyone has their own comfort. Some people really love direct mail and it's working for them. If that's working for you, stick with direct mail first and then move to text. For me, texts are working incredibly well. In fact, that we didn't even send mail for 6 months. Like, we just recently, the last month or two, started picking up mail again. That was the last July till last month. So And we've been doing the best we've ever done with just texting. Now, we are missing a significant portion of our list by just doing texting, but we were able to test a bunch of markets. Now, let's talk about nuts and bolts of texting. So go ahead if you have a specific question.
I was curious. So like, what is the cost for skip tracing in like, because I know like I've done some skip tracing before too. And sometimes like either nothing comes back or they get like 10 different numbers and none of them work.
Yeah.
And just trying to figure out like, I assume you don't have to pay anything when nothing comes back in terms of a phone number, right? And
yeah,
I don't know, just cost of that kind of thing.
Right. So Direct Skip is the company that I've partnered with. I've got some really good pricing negotiated with them for land investors. I did a bunch of research on skip tracing, and I also tried a couple different tools. The reason why I went with Direct Skip is that they pull from a database called IDI Core, which is one of the top record consolidation companies. They actually pull from credit reports. So if you go to lease a car or you're applying to rent an apartment, they're actually pulling from that data that's going into their credit report. So it's very current. You will pay if somebody has a landline. You can't necessarily choose, hey, I only want to pay if they have a mobile. So, and then I've negotiated them down to 10 cents a record to pull, but there's packages. So I typically get the package, I think it's about 10,000 skip traces for 8 cents a piece.
Awesome.
To get done.
Gotcha. And then when it comes time for the texting, so what software is being used for that?
Yep. So I looked at all of them. Again, I partnered with a company called Launch Control, and I've created a little community with them. They were meant for house wholesalers, but I have been working directly with them to make this really friendly for land investors. And they've been extremely awesome. And I'm actually partnered with them on more education. But if you go same REI Optimize and then go to recommended tools, I've got the Launch Control link there. And Launch Control, the reason why I love them is they actually started with a group of attorneys that came together and basically said, look, we know that this is out there. It's TPCA compliance, and we are concerned about being compliant. We're concerned about real estate investors being compliant. They work with, and they're partnered with something called the Blacklist Alliance, and they do TPCA risk mitigation. So that was my biggest concern. It's like, is this legal? What's legal, what's not? And so they've created a tool that has basically created, what do we call them when you bowl with bumpers? Like all of these guardrails so that you and your team are not breaking TPCA rules. For example, one of the rules that the TPCA has put in place is that if you text somebody, a first text, cold text, you have to wait 30 days to text them again if they don't respond to you. So many other tools out there just allow you to text someone at 28 days, 20 days, 15 days, 2 days, 1 day. And that's breaking TPCA compliance. You may not even know that you're doing it because your team is the one that's sending out text. So this tool physically does not allow you to send a text to somebody within 30 days. They recognize that, hey, nope, this has been sent before. You cannot do that. There are negative keywords that the carriers are looking for. They're looking for words like county, purchasing, selling, like literally every word that you could imagine. They're looking for interested, out of the blue, COVID. Those are all negative keywords that the carriers are constantly looking for to identify spam. When you're writing text in this tool, you cannot even save a message if you have one of those words in there. They also have something called spinner tokens. So the other thing that the carriers are looking for is the same message going from the same number over and over again. So if you use a tool that just allows you to drip a text and then you send an email, then you send a text, but you're sending the same message over and over and over again, you're not even going to realize it because you're not going to see it. It's going to look like it's delivered, but it's not. They're going to catch it if they're getting really good at it. So Launch Control has something called spinner tokens, which means that you can set a third of the messages to get hey, a third to get hi, and a third to get hello. And you can create these little tokens so that one message could have like 80 different variations on it. And then a full template is 5 messages. So you could have, I've got a copywriter that's he plays a game with himself to see how many variations he can get. But a lot of times we're seeing 800 or 900, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 different variations per one template. And we have 10 templates.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Sorry, just to clarify, that was Launch Control, correct?
Yep. So I've got my 5 here: Launch Control, Direct Skip. We haven't talked about Fresh Sales, Pebble, and then Robot Inc. Those are my favorite.
Gotcha. And I have talked to people who have done a bit of ringless voicemail drops, which I believe has changed a bit over the past year or two in terms of what you're allowed to do. So I don't even know if that's a viable option anymore. But the thing that I had heard about that was that it's very effective, and it's a different type of way to reach people that they don't usually expect through mail. But I don't know if it's a downside or upside, but you basically have to be ready to respond immediately after you send them out, because you're going to get hammered with people who are calling you. Is that how texting works too?
So ringless voicemail drops, I'm just going to put that in a whole nother bucket, because the TPCA pretty much prohibits any call to a wireless number using a pre-recorded voice without express consent of the recipient. That's a really dangerous line. It just depends on the amount of risk that you're willing to take on in your business. I would highly recommend just have a 30-minute conversation with an attorney, understand like what would happen if somebody did come after you. It may not be the end of the world, but that's a whole different camp versus the texting camp. Ringless voicemails are very effective, but you have to make sure that that voicemail does not sound recorded at all. And we can talk about that in a moment. The texting is the exact same. So pros and cons of texting. Pros is that it is so easy to get out text. It's a neutral text. I can literally in a half hour, like this morning, my VA reached out and she's like, I'm out of leads in launch control. Perfect. I literally pulled a new list down from data tree, uploaded it in a direct skip. That took about 20 minutes. Pull it back down, put it in launch control. Within an hour, she's off and running with a new list of 2,500 people to text. That is amazing. But when you do that, she's getting a lot of response. And if you send a batch of 150 messages, I'm expecting you have to be sitting there for an hour. And I would dedicate 90 minutes, because what's going to happen is people are going to be texting you. I want you to respond within 3 minutes. Ideally, because they have their phone, they're sitting right there. They texted you back and said, hey, I'm actually kind of interested, or yeah, tell me more. Okay, boom, open up MapRight, put their APN in there, look at their property. Do we want to buy it? Yes. Okay, now we need to engage, get them on the phone. I've never purchased a property that we got via text that we did not talk to somebody on the phone. That's just not going to happen. So this tool really just bubbles up conversations for you, but you have to have somebody sitting there responding. We have 2 full-time virtual assistants that are in the texting tool responding.
And I guess that kind of leads into my other question of, in this initial message that you're sending to people, like, what are you saying? Are you telling them to reply to this text or email me or go to this website or call me? Or what, how are you trying to steer the traffic?
Such a good question, Seth. So it depends on your strategy. It depends on how big your property is. Are you going after small little lots in Mojave? Are you going after 100-acre properties in Atlanta? Like, what are you doing? If you're going after smaller lots where there's not as much margin and you're trying to get numbers, I would straight up ask them if they'd be interested in having a conversation about getting an offer on their lot. You can totally put an offer in the text. I have found I make myself different by not. But I have 4 people working for me. So I have more ability to do DD on the backside. If it's just you might want to consider putting an offer or a range offer in the initial text to cut down on people that are responding to you. If you have a VA, I would say, hey blank, my name is Mary with Solterra, reaching out. We've been really interested in your lot, in your plot, in your parcel in blank county, in blank city. Have you considered a number, or would you consider an offer? Are you open to selling? You can't use the word selling. Are you open to an offer? You get the idea. If it's a bigger property, which we're doing more entitlements and subdivision work. I like to verify something about utilities. It looks like there is, but I wanted to verify legal road access. I think I see it, but you guys have power to the property. Just asking a question. Now, here's a tip. If somebody responds to you, even if they just say yes, no, thumbs up, whatever, all of those rules that I was telling you before are out the window. So you can use those negative keywords. You can use emojis. You can write whatever you want as long as you want. If they respond, all bets are off. So that is part of the strategy too, to just get them to respond. Again, if you lead with more of that type of question, you're going to have to qualify them, because they literally might just be answering your question. They might be not interested in an offer at all. So it is more work to do the texting. You have to have a VA that's trained to do this, in my opinion. If you're just a landowner or land investor that's starting, I would not recommend starting if you're doing texting yourself, because it is so much dirty work. You're going to get 10 responses and maybe one you're actually going to want to move on to the next phase.
I have a couple questions on that. So practically, if let's say I have a list of 10,000 and then I put that through the skip tracing software and I get back 7,000 records, 6,000 records with phone numbers. Some are mobile, some are house lines or main lines or whatever. Non-mobile, we'll just say. So what practically does it look like in terms of a time commitment? Like I'm sitting here, it's a land day, I have no coaching students, I'm like doing my thing, I send out a massive list of like a text blast. How many hours am I going to be sitting there communicating back and forth with people? Because you say it's more work, but like how much more work?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jaron. I would say, and it totally depends on your area in terms of the amount, right? If you're going after 100-acre properties in Austin, Texas, you could be doing that send a 500 texts and get like 2 responses. So it kind of depends. But let's just say you're getting a pretty significant amount of responses, which is typical of any normal market. I would say 2 hours, kind of block out the 2 hours. That's enough to get through a pretty significant amount of conversations. In Launch Control, another reason why I love it, they've got these quick replies in there. So if they say like, yes, I'm interested, you can just have these little quick replies like, awesome, let me get some more information so I can build out an offer for you. And I have all this kind of strategy and the tactics baked out if we want to go into it a little bit more. But yes, I would say about 2 hours, Jaron, for like a solid texting session.
What's the time I can expect to be working those leads for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks in terms of like a non-automation, like manual, like, hey, I'm having this conversation. This person seems very motivated or whatever. Like, I mean, because you said 10 and expect to get 1. And for how many texts would you say is that kind of a general rule of thumb?
I would say my general rule of thumb, if you're doing like classic, like my market is like mid-tier, making about 15K a deal. It takes us about 2,000 texts to do 1 deal. That's about normal. So 2,000 texts, we have about 19% response rate, but that includes people saying not interested, stop, whatever, and it's neutral. So just keep that in mind. So let's say out of that, if you get about 150 people that you actually have to respond to, and out of that, you're going to get 1 that you're going to pull the trigger on. Now, we talked about this before, but as land investors, we have this feeling that we want to go for the kill right now. Are you interested in an offer right now? And if someone says no, we just mark them as not interested and we never talk to them again. Versus having the idea, again, back to the house wholesaler, back to the multifamily, back to the commercial investor, what would they do? If somebody says, I'm not interested right now, they would say, no worries at all. Hey, you know what? I actually have a guide. It's the 16 factors that affect the value of your land, in Mojave, Arizona. I'd love to email it over to you. I think you'd find some good value in it, and we can just stay in touch, see if anything changes. Sure, email it over to me. Grab their email. We put that in your CRM system. And then now, and even if I don't even care if you're a brand new land investor, put it in a freaking Google sheet. I do not care. Put it at their name, their email, and the county, the state their property is in. Just start building this list of property owners that might want to sell in the future so that we can market to them, so that we can drip them some emails. Hey, how you doing? Thinking about you. Here's the blog post I wrote. It's the 4 documents needed to sell your property. Love for you to check it out. I think it could be helpful. And then, a follow-up call. Like that's next level. And we can talk about that as we talk kind of about that fresh sales, that next level CRM. But as a new land investor, don't let those guys slip through the cracks. If they say they're not interested, ask if you can follow up in a year. Because I hope all of us, I hope I'm doing this for a long time. People sell their property on average every 7 years. So don't let them fall through the cracks.
So have you found it's a helpful follow-up technique to program your texting to, at about 9 p.m., 10 p.m. each night, just send a message that says, sweet dreams, thinking about you? Like, does that creep people out, or does that motivate them to sell when you say stuff?
No, that's a no. Okay. That's a hard no, Seth. I love the idea. I love the passion. But that's a no.
Okay.
The best texting times are 10 to noon And then 4 to 6, I would say kind of over lunch. Because think about it, most people, this are all, the market that we're in, blue collar folks, they're working during the day. Some are tired, but most of the time they get time over lunch, they get time after work, and then they get time on Saturdays. And we do have a VA that works on Saturdays doing text.
And what is the cost like for the initial text you send? And is it you get charged for every additional response that you're sending, or just what is the cost breakdown for using texting in general?
That's a phenomenal question. So I recommend everyone just start on the light of launch control. It's $297 a month. And with that, you get 18,000 messages per month. You get 600 messages a day. There is not one person that I know that would hit that limit. That would be tremendous. But the reason why we are on the pro plan, which is $1,000 a month, you get more text, but we're sending probably 10,000 texts a month right now. We are doing marketing to, we're buying land in Nevada, Florida, and Minnesota. Very different markets. And when you're texting with launch control, they give you one area code to send messages from. That's what you get with the light package. So originally we were on light, and we were using a Minneapolis area code, 952, to send texts to Nevada. No go. People are like, what the heck? What's going on? Why are you sending me messages from Minnesota? You're not local. The moment we flip to a local Nevada number, the response rate doubled. So if you're just testing a market, and I've got buddies, they do Missouri, Kansas. Great, easy, one area code. If you're doing Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, just get a freaking Atlanta area code and you can do the whole Southeast. It's all the same. But if you've got a Minnesota to Nevada, that's the decision that would move you up in the tiers with launch control.
Gotcha. So it sounds like compared to direct mail, the cost is just way cheaper for texting. I mean, you still have the cost of
significant.
Yeah, I mean, you still got the cost of getting the list, and then I guess an additional cost for the skip tracing that you wouldn't have to do. But when it comes to the actual sending out of the message, that's way cheaper. Like, there's just no disputing that.
Let's say you've got a list of 5,000. Let's just say it's 8 cents a lead, so $400 for the skip tracing, and then we've got sorry for the dogs barking in the background. And then $297 for the launch control. If you're going to do this, I would bake in the cost of at least a part-time VA. I would say $7 an hour, 20 hours a week. I would say $500 a month. I would bake in for that, just to have help responding, just asking if they're interested in the offer. So I would say total, if you're just starting out, I'm looking at about $1,200 a month to get out. Obviously up to 18,000 texts, but there's no way that'd be way too many.
So it sounds like this VA thing is a pretty critical part of this working sustainably. And I had also heard you say, I think it was in one of our Facebook group conversations, you talked about how knowing how to comp a property in 5 minutes makes everything a lot easier. And I would agree with that. And I'm curious, like, what is your process for comping a property in 5 minutes? And how do you get a VA to, like, not only understand that, but just like think critically and be smart with these conversations? Because, like, you don't want to just have any idiot doing this. Like, they really kind of have to get the essence of what's going on. How difficult is that to find those people and train them up?
It is. So I will talk you through my origin story with people working for us, because I think it's helpful to know what the first step was. Because if you're most people probably listening to this are doing this on their own. The first hire that we made was a US based employee for $15 an hour plus 2.5% of all net profit that she brought into the business. I could not recommend doing either. Actually, I shouldn't say that. We did have a VA, like a Filipino VA, helping with everything. The moment we hired our first acquisitions manager, Kim, it was such a light bulb moment for me, because I was able to invest 100 hours into her. And then the moment we hired the next person, guess who trained the next person? Kim trained the next person and the next person. So if you're going to do this, it is a time commitment. And it took about 6 weeks for her to get to the place where she could think critically about a property. And the only way that she was able to do that is us sitting together. She would share her screen and we would go through leads. And we would say, okay, open that up let's look at MapRight. What do you see? Tell me what you see. every market is so, especially as you get into infill lots in Kansas City versus infill lots in Vegas versus infill lots in Orlando. There are versus rural land in Montana. Like every area has unique factors and unique things that you don't know about until you really get to know that area. For us, that's been leaning on realtors. We can get about 80% there, like on the price, on the idea, but a lot of times for our properties, our average margin now is about 25,000. We have text threads with 3 of our realtors. I'm going to dinner on Thursday with one of our realtors. We're looking at properties all day Friday together. He has a Google sheet that he fills out with the current value of the property and the expected value after improvement. We lean on them a lot. So that is a huge win for us, because what's happening now is that we have 2 acquisitions managers. I call them kind of the negotiators, compers. They're the ones that are finding the finalized price. They are building the offers. They're negotiating, they're closing. The VAs that are working in launch control, they're responsible for identifying whether or not we want to buy the property and the 3 comps that are nearby. And they're getting better. Like my whole thing is they will go as far as you take them to go. If you have this idea that your VA that's doing launch control will never be able to comp property, they definitely will never be able to comp property. But if you sit with them, or somebody sits with them, looks at MapRate, looks at your comp map, and you start to create these relationships and you do it 50 times, they're going to learn how to comp property. With all that being said, you need to learn, you need to know how to comp property. And I would highly recommend sitting down with a realtor, doing a Zoom session, having 10 leads up and saying, look, I need 20 minutes. I want to comp these properties together, have your entire team on the call, record it on Zoom, and get that knowledge from them. Oh, that property has a view of the water. We're going to bump that value up 30%. Ooh, look at the drainage on that. That is a steep slope. That is going to be wetlands city. No way. Don't want that. Every area is different. It's up to you as a leader to help them understand what the factors are. But once they can learn the patterns, and MapRite is an amazing, some sort of great mapping tool, they'll get it.
Yeah. So I guess maybe I'm hearing a couple different angles of this, but so it sounds like realtors are a critical part of this comping process. But I had also heard you say comping a property in 5 minutes. So is there like a way for you to just do it internally with MapRite, or like what does that 5-minute process look like?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
We did not get to the 5-minute mark until we comped properties about 25 times with our realtor. So that, like, even in our area of Nevada, we have to look at this water rights map, this link that she sent us. It's like super secretive, like, does it have water rights or not? All these different rules, all these different things. Now we can get to the place where we can do it in 5 minutes. So every single lead that comes into launch control where they say they do want to sell the property gets a MapRite map. The basic things. Clint Turner, it's called FACS. He created this floodplain access, either contour lines or comps. I'm kind of on the contour lines. FACT, taxes at slope. So you can do comps if you want, but pull it up in MapRite, look at the road access. Does it have it? Is it a floodplain? Is it a wetland? Just the basic stuff. What's the shape? Does it look like you could do whatever you want to do on the property? Is it flat? That's kind of like really deciding. I would say that's the decision of whether you want to buy it. And then it depends on how well you know that area. If this is a brand new area, no chance I'm going to be able to comp this in 5 minutes. I have no idea. I've never done work here before. But I've been in this area for 2 years. Now I've done this 25 times with our realtor, 30 times. We've bought and sold 20 properties there. 100%. We can get in there, look at MapRite, look around it. And then I have a heat map built. I use all the price comps and I just plot them on Google My Maps. And then we just take the lat long from MapRite, copy it, paste it, put it in Google My Maps, zoom in and just look at the comps nearby. And we can get about 90% to what our realtor would say.
Just to clarify, so am I hearing that the realtor is involved in this 5-minute comp process? Like that is a critical part of this?
I would say if she maybe. So in the area in Nevada, she's not a part of the 5-minute comp process. In our new area in Florida, 100%. We would text the APN and the address in our little text thread, and then she would respond.
So it's kind of like waiting for them then. So I guess there's a certain amount that you or your VA can do internally to figure out what the situation is. And then you're just trying to get verification from the realtor whenever they respond?
Exactly. Yep. And I would only get verification if we are we've had a great conversation with the seller on the phone, and they have definitely said they want to sell, and they definitely want to sell in the next 30 days. We've identified the decision makers, who's on the deed. Like, this is clean, because you don't want to bring it to your realtor and then be like, what happened? It's like, oh, they actually didn't want to sell. Like, that's embarrassing. So you really got to make sure that this person really wants to sell, and you've maybe floated a range to that person. So, hey, I think we'd probably be able to offer somewhere between blank and blank. Is that in your wheelhouse? Is that in your ballpark? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, now our final text is just confirming with the realtor, making sure we're aligned on the price.
Okay, gotcha.
I'll just add, in case it's helpful, because we have a similar process in our land business, and even just this morning we were just kind of fine tuning it. So like for us, we kind of break down due diligence or running comps into 2 different phases. We have what we call our initial, or like phase 1 due diligence, which would be the equivalence of like the 5-minute offer. But before we actually seal the deal and take title, we're doing a second phase of due diligence, confirming all of our original assumptions, and then I bring in the agent typically at that time. However, the reason why there's discrepancy between markets, as that you brought up, I run into the same thing. In Florida, which is my primary market, like it's easy and comps are plentiful and all of that. But take a state like Virginia, North Carolina, or Tennessee, even, where things are more diverse in terms of typography and all of that. Sometimes you literally look up there and you're like, there are no comps. I could sell this property for $5,000 or 15 or 20, whatever, like, and then you have to bring in an agent in that initial due diligence phase in order to even bring in an offer. Now, I know a lot of people are doing blind offers and range offers, so it's a little bit different. I do neutral letters, but that's how we tackle it.
I love it, Jaron. And I think it depends too. Like, are you doing rural land 2 hours outside of a major city where there's a lot of consistency across land? Great. Use the comps. Everything's pretty much the same. We could not use the comps in the area of Nevada that we're in. It would not work, because you'd look 2 blocks south and it'd be worth $15,000 less than the property 2 blocks north, because there are so many unique factors in that area. So if you're seeing this crazy discrepancy between pricing and you can't figure it out, there is a reason for it.
I agree.
Maybe it's like not the best part of town, is their busy road, and most people on listening to this are probably doing that more of a rural acreage to start. But just be careful. If you're seeing big discrepancies, reach out to a realtor and try to dig in on that before you start doing major comping and major texting in that area.
So one of the questions, I want to circle back to something that sprung up in my mind while you guys were talking a bit earlier. I really like this idea of text message blasting, but I also am aware of the fact that a large portion of our target audience doesn't do text and doesn't do emails and doesn't do a lot of 21st century type of stuff. So I feel like if you were to take this on as your primary strategy, there would be a lot of opportunity left on the table that nobody would respond to your text message blast. So, I mean, obviously the quick answer is like, well, do other stuff besides text, which I understand. But we start talking about pay-per-click, and we talk about even, I think ringless voicemail drops could work, because I think our demographic listens to voicemails at least. But I've bought property from people who literally live on a property that runs on a generator. And so I could only call them on certain hours of the day and that kind of thing, right? And so they were very much, half the time, I don't want to say half, I'd probably say, I don't know, 20% of the time, I don't end up even getting the signed purchase agreement on properties that I buy, because it's just logistically too much of a nightmare. We just move on to the title company and run the risk. So what do you do with that?
So let me you have this idea, Jaron. You have this idea that maybe older folks, you're telling me that older folks won't respond to text.
Oh no, they might respond to text, but I guess my question is better suited not in text message blast, because a lot of people are accustomed to texting. But when we talk more pay-per-click, or we talk about email blasts or sending out a newsletter, that kind of stuff, because you were talking about long-term nurturing of the leads, like those things, a lot of the demographic aren't tech savvy. Like that's just not a part of their world. So what do you do with those people that fit that demographic?
Yep. I will say that we have bought property from many folks over the age of 90. And the first time it happened, his name is Melvin. He's based in Hawaii. He was 92. We pulled the age comes out of direct skip. So in launch control, we always add the age as a field because our rule is if they're over the age of 80, you got to call them right away. But he responded just saying, call me. And so we called him and it was like, what, Melvin, we're so impressed. Like, tell me. He's like, if I wanted any chance of talking to my grandkids during COVID, I had to figure out this phone. So I will say that I think things have changed quite dramatically over the last 2 years of using the phone for older folks, but obviously not all of them are. I think the handwritten letter is for sure, number one, the best way to get in touch with somebody who is not using technology. Of course, pay-per-click on Facebook, I think is great. Targeted pay-per-click, right? Like with land, we can't be like, we buy land in Las Vegas. Like we don't know where these people live. But if you do collect, another reason why I want you to collect email addresses, because if you have an email address and they've opted in to something and they said, yes, please send me that PDF, please send me that resource. Now you can take that email list and you can upload it into Facebook and you can directly market to that person. So that's called targeted campaigns. We can go down a whole rabbit hole with that. But that's one way. This sounds a little crazy, but right now we're doing a really hyper-targeted campaign with another land investor. We're partnering up on it in Texas for property that's subdividable. There's only 250 properties that show up that are available on DataTree. For every single one of those people, we're going to start with a text. Whoever doesn't respond, I've got a skip tracer that's going to go through and they're going to add all of their social profiles to that list, and we're going to DM them on Facebook. So, think about where people are. Obviously the mail is what we've been using, but I think trying a different type of mail, only to people, maybe you use the age filter, and then maybe you use an age filter, and then of course try other marketing, and then your list is going to be whittled way down, and maybe it's only 500 people.
What would you suggest for an age finder? Would you use the direct skip?
Direct skip. Yep. That when you export that list, it gives you the age of the person.
Well, that's a huge thing. That just literally solved years of not heavy research, but like years of me wanting to figure that out. So thank you very much.
I know, right? You're very welcome. Yep. Yeah. Yep. That's all you needed.
We might be handling this conversation a little bit backwards. So maybe a better question to ask maybe 10 minutes ago is, what are all the different ways that you market to people? Like I hear direct mail, I hear texting, I hear ringless voicemail, email, online ads, like, whoa. Like, okay, so what do we start with first? What leads into the next thing? How do you decide when and what to do the next thing? And like the email address thing, for example, like I know the skip tracer I've used, the email addresses come along with the phone numbers, but a lot of times they're like not good anymore, that kind of thing. But it sounds like what you're talking about is maybe you get them to respond to something first and then you collect a relevant email address. I don't know.
I sure do.
You go ahead and talk. I'm not gonna put words in your mouth.
Okay. So this is not a science, first and foremost. I don't have this is the exact formula to do this. You have to test different forms of marketing in different markets. If you're going after people that have owned property for 25 years in rural Arizona, probably going to be an older demographic, maybe some inheritance. So you're going to have to test these things out. I'll tell you what I'm doing. We are taking our list, let's just call our honey hole in Nevada. So we're taking our list, it's about 6,000 properties on that. What we've been doing the last 3 months is we've been sending a series of text messages. That list is whittled down to about 4,200 people that did not respond at all to the text campaign. I can go into launch control, I can export those people out, and I'm using Fresh Sales as my CRM. You don't need a CRM like that until you've got at least 2 or 3 people working for you. And then that's when you need to measure KPIs and do way more on the process side. I update Fresh Sales. Then I export out of Fresh Sales. I would say it depends on the level of risk that you're willing to take on in your business, but a ringless voicemail drop or a cold calling campaign to do the next. Now, if you have this as a solidified business, you've got some capital, you've got some money, I would recommend make your cold calling campaign. Hey, this is so-and-so, I'm working for a local land and looking for a local real estate investor. Hey, we're reaching out, kind of making contact with local property owners. And we actually have a guide. It's the 16 factors that affect land in this area. I'd love to email it over and introduce ourselves. I think you might like it. I think it might be valuable for you. That's a super slow play, right? Like that's taking a gulp, being like, okay, I'm not asking for an offer. If you do that, they will tell you if they want an offer. You're saying you are buying properties in the area and you're giving them. Now, if you exchange the guide for the email, you send them a quick email. Now you get them in your system, and now you can do more marketing to them down the line. You do get emails out of direct skip, but like you said, they're not great, Seth. So maybe you're using a tool like dBounce to filter out some of those emails, but they're still not as great as asking. So then my recommendation is kind of the ringless voicemails with the cold calling. That's kind of the second cheapest form of marketing besides texting. The next step, I would say, would be mail. So depending on how well you know the area, and maybe at this point you've decided this area sucks. Like I can't sell property. I'm having trouble comping. I haven't found a great realtor. The title company's so slow. Like you don't have to keep going down this path. I think it's really important to test an area and see if you feel, get your groove. Because if you don't, move on and start the texting over again somewhere else, or start the mail again over somewhere else. If you're really jiving and you're getting good deals and you're feeling good about it, the next step is to do, I think, some mail or do some cold emailing, depending on how you're feeling things are going. But I would say mail is next. And then after that, depending on how deep you want to go, I would say in this area of Nevada, after we get through our mail, we're going to take all those emails that we got from DirectSkip. We're going to upload them to a tool called dBounce. That will identify any emails that are going to bounce. If you're going to do cold email campaigns, you cannot just blast out 1,000 emails out of your CRM system. Your primary domain will be absolutely flagged for spam. So my recommendation is to, that list of 250, like I said, you could make $1 million on one deal. Maybe we're dripping out 15 a day, 20 a day, 30 a day. This is getting really technical, but just bear with me. Or you get a secondary domain, like whatever, johnsonlandgroup.com instead of Johnson Land, so that you're sending stuff from another domain that's not going to be killed by potential spam. And then if you're really making enough margin, that's where you'd go through and have somebody go through and find all their social profiles and maybe DM them on social, which is totally next level. And you'd only do that if the margins are there, you're making money, and this area is hot for you.
Sounds like clearly follow-up is a really big deal for you and your philosophy and how this all works. So which is actually, it's worth mentioning, because for a long time, a lot of land investors are just like, nope, no follow-up. Like, I'm just going to send this one piece of mail and that's it. If you don't want to do it, then we're done.
Right.
And that's like a foreign concept to most marketers. And I'm just curious, maybe it's like a multifaceted question, but like how much follow-up is typically required before it's like, okay, now we're seeing results. Like we followed up for 6 months. Now it's starting to happen. Or like, at what point can you tell if this is truly a dead lead? Like nothing's going to happen here. Let's stop following up with them. Is there a way to even measure that?
It's such a great question.
Thanks.
So here's my pitch, and I have my company REI Optimize. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been working with my friend Jason. He is a conversion content specialist. So had coffee with him a couple times, told him, he's like, oh my God, like you need to like really write some converting content. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. What's converting content? So we went through it. We're creating a company called REI Boost. And so what we're doing now is this exact thing. Now, this is for land investors that have a team, they're executing marketing, they're bringing in a significant amount of leads. They don't know what to do with all the leads that said they're not interested right now. Most real estate investors know how to attract leads. Some know how to manage them, but very few know how to follow up over time. I think it takes, on average for us, it's taken us about 6 months to see them come back around. This area in Nevada, we ran out of texts, not ran out, but we texted everyone 2 or 3 times about a month ago. And we've been living off of the people coming back around from the automated sequences of like, you know what, actually, yeah, like let's have a conversation about that. We're in a huge time of uncertainty with our market, with our economy, like day to day things can change for people. We had a guy that said absolutely not in September. He came back around in February. We're seeing that all the time. So I think 6 months is a healthy amount of time for a situation to change, a financial situation to change. But if you're really going to be there, I would say a year, 2 years. And in terms of content, educational, entertaining. Don't be these are the 4 steps to selling your land. Like, be a person. Invest in a copywriter. Be a little funny. Make some quirks. Like, be yourself. And if that's not your vibe, if you're very professional, buttoned up all around your website, then sure, you can make your content like that. But I think in this world, we have to differentiate ourselves because, again, we're competitive. It's overgrown. If you're the guy that's sending one mailer, that might work. I'm going to be touching them 7 times from every different angle and following up with them twice a month for 3 years. Who might they call back a year later when they are considering selling? The gal that's kind of followed up or the guy that sent them the one letter. Now, again, I've got bigger margins. I've got a team. I've got marketing budget, and I've got time to build this content out. But we've seen a significant return from building the follow-up sequences.
Yeah. And when we're talking about content, so this might be kind of a foreign concept to a lot of land investors who are used to just sending out a letter and that's their content. Like, that's it. So what you're talking about is every single time you follow up with somebody, like, you have to have something new and interesting to say instead of just like, hey, you ready to sell yet? Like, it's more than that. You got to like kind of develop a relationship. And that can be kind of a huge job to like just have the creativity and yeah. So how does that work?
Well, that's why this is hilarious. So this is exactly what happened with Solterra about 4 months ago. I had some content put together of, the process of working with us, the 4 documents needed to sell your property, factors that affected land value. It was okay. We redid everything. And and Jason even kept saying, like, why don't you just, you write this, and then we'll come back. I just wasn't doing it because it goes to the back of my to-do list every time. He wanted a case study. He wanted a vendor profile on the title company that we work with. He wanted an interview with the attorney that we call. He wanted all these things. And I'm like, I'm literally never going to do this. So that's why we're creating services around it with professional copywriters. And we literally will just interview. But let's talk about what a sequence is, what a follow-up sequence is. So a follow-up sequence is a series of messages or touches over a period of time. So we think of, that's why I love Fresh Sales. They have those automated sequences. So what you can do is you can say, typically the sequence starts when you ask somebody permission to send them something. And that's why I like to have some pillar content. If you have an area that you own, let's say you own Costilla County, you should have a PDF of the 14 factors that affect land in Costilla County, Colorado. It is deep dive into Costilla County. You ask them, hey, let me follow up with this with you. Let me send it to you. The first email sends them that. 14 days later, maybe it's a little, hey, hi, hello. Did you read the PDF? I hope all is well. 14 days later, they get a case study of the last deal that you did in Costilla. No numbers. You're not talking price. You're not talking anything. You're talking, how did you solve somebody's problem? They needed to close. They were moving. You closed in 30 days. You used a title company. It was a great experience. 14 days later, quick touch base. Maybe it's a call. 14 days later, they get a article on the ways to minimize capital gains taxes on the sale of your property. That's a blog on your website. Maybe it's an unlisted YouTube video that you're sending, but it's also the body of the email. And then, of course, we keep going. These are all pieces of information. Think about, what questions are your sellers asking you? How do I go through probate? What do I do with inherited property? How do I sell my land quickly? What are the 4 hidden costs of selling land? Like, what are these things that your sellers are thinking about that you can proactively educate them on so that they view you as a thought leader and they view you as a trustworthy resource?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
I named my land business, my land coaching business rather, excuse me there, my throat went all weird. I named it 80-20 land investing because the 80-20 principle is probably my North Star. It's I probably should get it like tattooed, but there's no universal symbol for 80-20, so that's why I don't have it tattooed yet. But I wanted to kind of, in the light of 80-20 and from an efficiency standpoint, you mentioned that you stopped mailing for 6 months and just exclusively text blasted. What do you feel like is the most bang for your buck? Do you feel like it's texting? Do you feel like it's a lot of it's mail? Do you think it's a combination? Like, if you had to choose, hey, I can only do these 2 things, or 3 things, what would be those things and why in terms of a marketing perspective?
Yeah. I mean, texting, because literally the same place where this person's mom is asking them how they're doing, you are right underneath asking if they want to sell their property. That is ridiculous. I have no idea how long this is going to last. I'm sure Apple's going to come out with something so that unknown numbers go in a separate inbox like Facebook or something. So I would say taking advantage of the texting opportunity that we have right now by far is the most bang for your buck. Knowing that you have to have a VA, but if you do have one that you're willing to train, 100%. The second to that would probably be RVMs or calls, just asking if somebody's interested, RVMs. And then in my last sequence, I didn't really go into the PPC thing because honestly, we probably should just do a part 2 because that's just a whole nother kit and caboodle of pay-per-click ads.
Great minds think alike. I just texted Seth on Slack. We should probably do a part 2. This is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I don't want to get so weedy. People are like, I have no idea what she's even saying. But I think if you found your market, if you've done a texting campaign, maybe a calling campaign, and then I would say some handwritten letters to the older individuals, and then maybe just a regular batch of mailers, you're going to know by then, is this the area that I want to continue with? But 100%. And I have had people disagree with me, they love their mail. That's amazing. If mail works for you and you don't have time to sift through people, mail is an amazing way to start in this business, to learn it, to take leads in, to comp, to build your process, to close on deals. Once you've done 10 deals, that's when I think it's time. That's when I think you can do the texting. It's just, you just are going to have to qualify a lot more.
I get people who don't want to give up direct mail because we get it. We've all done it. We've seen it work, that kind of thing. And it's kind of a lot to start learning all these new systems. A lot of us, it took a lot of work just to get our arms around direct mail and to now figure out these new systems and stuff. But at the same time, it's I don't know, the world is always changing. And I mean, there is this issue where a lot of people are hitting the same counties with the exact same thing. And it's just it needs to spread out a little bit, That's
the biggest thing, right? If for some people listening, this is a hobby for them on the side. If this is a hobby for you and you don't have much time, yeah, you're just going to use the pre-baked template that was a part of your training. You're going to whip them out and try to get something to land so you can get your confidence up, right? You don't have the time to train someone and do this and spend the money on a VA. I get it. It is an amazing way to get in. But once you're in, let's start thinking about even the content of that mailer. If you're mailing to Jacksonville, Florida, and you're trying to get land there, your mailer should talk about Jacksonville. And it should talk about the factors that affect land in Jacksonville. We're just so we're lazy. Okay. We're lazy, right? We're using the same words in every county. We're not doing any work on our website. Every single person's checking you out online. I mean, if your website's on there, who is this? Is this a scam? Is this real? What's going on here? Do they even know my area? My whole thing now is, I don't give you a price because I actually want to look at your property before I price it. Every other person that you've gotten an offer from in the mail, you think they looked at your property before they sent you that letter? And sorry for everyone that's doing that. That's just how I'm using it to my advantage. When they ask me why I just don't have an offer ready, because I don't know if your property has utilities or not. I didn't do that research before I reached out to you. That's why I'm calling, to ask you.
Yeah, I've noticed a pretty substantial competitive advantage to sticking to neutral letters.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, have this idea that you're just going to get inundated with, overwhelmed with tire kickers for some reason, but that's just not true. You're going to have much more tire kickers, I would imagine, with a text message blast and be much more bottlenecked with that if you're processing those. Yeah. So it's but I just stick to neutral letter. I say on my neutral letter that I am a real estate investor, and so therefore I can't pay full market value for any property that I buy. And that kind of accomplishes the same aim as a blind offer or range letter, but it's and I'm getting better deals because people actually call me and they're like, you're the first one of these land investor types that actually gave me a real offer. So let's do the deal,
Yeah. Seth and I, where we met was at RebCon in Phoenix. And there was a guy there, Tom Sylvester. He has a company called Lifestyle Builders. And he was in the wholesaling space for a long time, and he gave me some really good advice. He was saying, when he was negotiating with seller leads, he would make it really hard for them to sell to him. He would say, why don't you just list it with a realtor? Why don't you just wait 12 months and list it with a realtor and get the top price? Like, what's the deal? And they're like, well, I don't know. I mean, I kind of need to move a little quicker than that. And he's like, why? Make it hard for them. If you come off just like in a dating relationship, if you're coming off like, when can we meet? Can we talk? You available? You want to do a date? Let's meet tomorrow. Let's do this. It's like,
it's too intense.
Let them chase you. Make it feel like I don't have to do this deal. Like, you can do this if you want, but I don't really understand why you're doing this. It doesn't really make sense to me. If you want to get top dollar, I've got a preferred realtor. It might take 12 months, it might take 24, but you're going to get top dollar with her. She's great. And I'm more than happy to introduce you. Like, we say that all the time, and they'll come back around and be like, no, I need to move faster, because that's the truth. We are in a world where we need people to have pain. We need people to have a problem. If they don't have a problem, they're not going to sell to you below market value.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think we as land investors, or even by and large as just general real estate investors, we understand that just as much as we're trying to generate leads, we're also trying to disqualify leads. Like, we're trying to have this fine balance of qualifying and disqualifying people within our funnel, because we don't want just anybody calling us, because we don't want to talk to people who want market value. We want to disqualify people who want market value. So, like,
Absolutely.
It's super important for us to do that.
Yes. Train your people. Like, it's so funny how I often say my acquisitions people are salespeople, and they're like, oh, so they're also selling your properties. I'm like, no, the acquisition people are selling to the property owners. This is a sales cycle. You have to make sure, and I've been in B2B sales for 10 years, but it's called BANT, B-A-N-T, budget, authority, needs, timeline. What kind of budget are they looking for? What kind of price point are they looking for? Authority, who's on the deed? Are they actually wanting to sell? Have you communicated with them? Have you gotten offers in the past? What did they say about it? N is needs. Like, what do they need? Do they need to move quickly? Do they need your help tracking down the deed? Do they need help because they have no idea where the paperwork is on that easement that they know is on the property? Like, you can solve that problem. And then T is timeline. Well, you can ask them, right? Hey, look, if we come to an offer that makes sense for both of us, are you comfortable closing in the next 30 days? We may have gotten to the point where they're comfortable with the price. We know who's on the deed. We know they want to move fast, or that we don't know that yet. And they might be like, no, it's probably more of like a year thing for me. Okay, great. No worries. We're going to follow up in 6 months. You cannot let your team put those people in the pipeline, because that's just going to cloudy everything up. And that's not a real opportunity right now, at least.
So switching gears a little bit, I know one of the wow moments I had when I was just overhearing what you were saying at RubeCon was when you were talking about your process for finding a land specialized agent. I don't even remember what you said, but I was just like, oh, that's a really smart way to do it. Can you recap that? Like, what is your process for finding?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Before I go into it, the OG real estate land specialist finder is Jaron. So I am a second generation. This is not me starting point. So Jaron has an awesome guide that he created. I literally think it's called finding a land broker, potentially.
Yeah, I will. I'll put a link to it in the show notes for this episode, by the way, as well as Callan's website. It's retipster.com/132.
And just for the record, because we have to set it straight, as much as I would love to take credit for it, it really goes to my wife who came up with the idea. So.
Heck yeah, the true OG. I love it. We should probably put her on that article.
It's really her.
Mm-hmm. Yep, she's letting you take credit for it. So I took that as a foundation to finding an agent, and I put it on steroids. So the thing that you need to know for sure, and Jaron has a little bit of this, is that this person actually does land sales, because if they know how to sell a house, that is 90 million times different than selling a piece of land. So my process is I typically start by going to Zillow. I look at the last 6 months of land sales, and I go through the listings and put it at that price point that you're considering selling. So if you're considering selling land from 50 to 100 grand, put it at 50 to 200 grand, make it kind of a wide angle. It's straight up, look at the listings. Did they take nice pictures? Did they write a nice description? Or did they write one sentence with a blurry iPhone photo? Like, so many realtors do, which is totally fine. We've all seen it.
Or the same picture across multiple listings.
100%.
And it's only one picture.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Same picture of the Costilla billboard. I get it. We're in Costilla. I totally understand. That's what I'm searching here. So did they put some effort into it? Did they do a drone photo? Did they put parcel lines? Is it nice? Is it good to look at? Okay, cool. So we've identified maybe the top ones or the repeats that we've seen. You do that same exercise on Realtor.com. You can do the same exercise on Lands of America. Just make sure they're actual an agent. If they are on Lands of America, that's a great sign. They actually care about land. They're going to this land specific place and they're posting there. Okay, so we've identified the top. Now that we have that, now it is the tough part. To find our land agent in Florida, we've got two, one on the east, one on the west coast, and it took us 10 conversations. We almost gave up. And we finally found one that they have to be hungry. That's straight up. Like, no matter who you work with, they have to be motivated by money. When you're talking to a land realtor, it is so important that you sell yourself to them, because you're coming in here and you're making a weird pitch, a little bit of a weird pitch, but here's exactly how I do it. Hey, Blake, my name's Callan. I'm with Soltero. I'm actually a land investor, and we're picking up a bunch of properties in your area. I've noticed you've sold some land in this area. We are looking for someone to help with the disposition side, kind of the sales side. So once we get our property purchased, we're looking to someone to help take it to market, and wondered if that's something that you'd be interested in. 50% of people at that point are going to say, no, I don't want to work with an investor. I only want to work with an owner. So expect 50% to say no. I think a lot of people are like, oh my God, like she's saying no to me right away. A lot of times they're like, yeah, like tell me more, because some of them haven't heard. And then others, the top 20%, work with land investors all the time and they totally get it and they understand, but that's rare. So then we're making sure like we're aligned. They understand that we're not the property. Well, we are kind of, but you get the idea. We're investors. So then I go into how great we are at marketing and how many leads we're generating. And a lot of those leads want market value. So I need somebody to send leads to. So my pitch now is awesome. So a little bit about us. We obviously we're buying and selling property. Sometimes we're doing improvements to it, clearing it. We're doing some subdivided entitlement work to some. But my background is marketing, technology, and we're actually doing a wide variety of marketing. We're doing texting, we're doing calling, we're doing mail, email, and we're really, really good at getting in touch with property owners. Typically about 10% of people that respond to us are deals that we actually end up doing. We have a significant amount of leads that want market value. And that's really someone I want to feel really comfortable partnering with too. So that's actually what I'm looking for as well. Someone I can hand these leads off to. I know they're going to get taken care of. And then of course, someone that can come in and help us get the drone pictures done and just help us manage the entire buyer pipeline. And wanted to see if that's something that's kind of in your wheelhouse.
How often is it that you just flat out can't find the right person?
It happens. It happened to us in North Carolina.
If you ever need a North Carolina agent, call me. I got you.
Phenomenal, Jaron. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The power of networking right there.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing is if you do have a good agent somewhere, they actually get like referral fees if they refer you to an agent in another market. So if you're with RE/MAX, if your agent's with RE/MAX, say, hey, Andrea, I'm looking to do deals in Gulf Coast of Florida. I know it's so random, but I'm wondering if you know like who the land agent is for RE/MAX. And we did that in Florida, and that was a huge introduction. They wanted like a one pager on our company, and like they wanted to see like access to capital and some weird stuff, but that's fine. Gave them all that.
It's interesting that you get so much pushback, because I feel like 50%. You mentioned 50% reject working with investors, and then like you have to give, like you said, proof of funds. Like I never have had that. I do have it. I would probably say my number is probably closer to 10 to 20% of agents like don't want to work with investors. But I've never, like what I do to tell them to be comfortable, I'm like, hey, I know we need to protect your interest. So I'm happy to sign like some preliminary like listing agreement contingent upon the deal coming through or something to make them at ease. But I've had only one agent ever ask me to actually do that. And
oh, wow. Huh.
I don't know.
I don't know. And part of it too is maybe not even necessarily the pushback on us being an investor, but like I said, the agent truly is a part of our team in the markets that we have, in the 3 major markets. Like the agent that we have in Minnesota, like I said, I'm going to his house for dinner, and like he is in our, like he's in our Slack. I'm giving him a email address for us. Like he goes and visits.
That's a lot different. Yeah.
That's next level. Next level. And he's comping properties, he's meeting sellers at properties. Like that is the type, that's a next level engagement. And so we just probably are a little bit more picky on, and that's where he has to be really hungry to want to do that with us.
I will say though, like them going to the property is like, I think one of the most important things to have your agents do. If they're not willing to go and like, even before a listing agreement, and go and like take pictures and walk the property, it's like, what's the point, you know?
100%. We had a guy in Florida who was like, it was a pretty big buy. It was like a buy for 200,000, sell for like 400. And he was like, I was like, have you gone there? Have you seen it? And he's like, fine, I'll just go look at it right now. I'm like, dude, you're like,
that's terrible.
What are you talking? Oh my God. Like we're giving him a percentage of profits on the deal. Like so crazy. So that's the type of attitude that you just want to, and if you're feeling that from your realtor, cut them.
Yeah.
Like,
cut them immediately.
Just move to the next person that is going to be willing to get out there, take pictures. But you know what? We give 10% of net profit a lot of times on top of what they already get on their brokerage fees to our realtors too. So that's important to know. The ones that are on our team, and sometimes even more on big deals. So they are getting compensated for doing this work.
That's awesome. That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
They love it.
Totally. And I've heard you say a few times now that you're in 3 major markets. Are you saying 3 counties, or do you mean like 3 metropolitan areas or 3 states? Like, what does that mean?
Minnesota is where I'm from. I'm in Minneapolis, born and raised. So we're doing basically hunting and recreational property all over Minnesota. I would say right now, I've got the whole state dialed in of like where we're going to go.
Okay. So a market is a state, really?
Yeah. Minnesota. Now, Nevada is in one city, like dialed into one city.
Okay.
Florida, we're on East Coast, 3 counties, and then West Coast, 4 counties. Getting a little into Gulf.
Gotcha. The reason I'm asking that is because I know a lot of land investors have this habit of like jumping from one area to another.
Oh, yeah.
But it sounds like your success has kind of been, from just sticking to these core areas that you know of. And maybe that's one of the benefits of being willing to follow up so much, is you can really squeeze a lot more business out of every place that you target. I was wondering, like, do you ever feel like you're missing out on other markets because you're just sticking to these one areas, or not? Sounds like you've got more businesses you can handle with the way you're doing it, right?
I wish that we had talked about this, because most people may not be listening anymore. But if you're still listening, thank you. Because this is probably the biggest nugget of what I've learned from studying other land investors outside of land investing. The really successful empires have been built by understanding an area and its streets and what's good and what's bad, and building a team and having that dispo side. It's really easy to generate leads anywhere. If you told me tomorrow you need leads in Sacramento for land, I could do that. Do I know how to sell land in Sacramento? Comp land? Do I know the title company I'm going to work with, the documents that I need, the intricacies?
Even the due diligence. I mean, the fact that if you are in Sarasota, Florida, you have to like check for scrub jays.
100%.
That's a very specific Florida specific thing, and every market has some version of it.
Absolutely.
So I mean, yeah, I can't echo what you're saying more. I think it's spot on.
And if you can commit to an area, when we're on the phone with people in our Nevada market, it's game over. We know so much more than them about every intricacy. It's like, you know what? You're on Johnson Street. That road is busy, it's loud. Like we know that in that area. And that sets us apart, because every other person has no idea. When they're talking about an offer, we're going into intricacies of that area. And it's like, oh wow, like they're experts. In our marketing, you better believe like the sales sequences in that area are much different. The content that they're getting versus the sales sequence that our Florida market is getting. It's about Florida. That takes time and energy. Again, I've been doing this for 2 years and I'm a psycho. So I've been like working extremely hard to get to that place, but I cannot reiterate enough, put blindfolds on. If you find an area, every company that's ever been successful finds their thing and repeats it. In the beginning, we've got to hustle, grind, find an area, try a bunch of different things, and then you have to zone in if you find it.
It's also really helpful from a tax perspective if you focus on a handful of markets instead of just doing anywhere where there's deals. I feel like it's across the board, there's a lot of advantages and a lot of best practices in focusing on a particular area.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So in terms of finding this area, that's great. Like, how do you know when you found it? Especially if somebody's sort of newer to the business and like, they don't know if, is this a honey hole or not? Like, what would you say are the signs that like, yep, you've made it, stick to this place?
It's such a great question, Seth. The first thing that we're looking for is that response on the text. And when we ask them the number that they're looking for, if there are areas in Florida that we texted and they all came back, we did quarter acre lots, and every single one of them said 100 grand, 100 grand, 100 grand, 100 grand, and they're worth 100 grand. So they're like, we've got 10 builders lined up to buy this property. Okay, so like totally oversaturated on offers. They're getting hit from every which direction. Like that's a no. So if they're all coming with the same kind of offer price, they've probably been hit up by multiple people and companies. If you feel like you're getting, it's just like anything. Like you get a couple at bats, you're like, ooh, like this feels like a good lot. You talk to your realtor, they're like, that's worth 100 grand. They're saying they want 40. Like, okay, if we get that like a couple times through and we just get our confidence up, it's just a normal flow. Like we just start feeling like, okay, I feel comfortable on the sale price. I honestly think when you sell one property in your market, your confidence is like a mental thing. It's like through the roof. You're like, okay, holy crap. Like I did it. I know how to do it. Title worked. Realtor was spot on. Great. Okay, now we're going to do it again. I would say 3 is kind of that feeling of like, yeah, this works. But was your question about kind of when the feeling is, or how did I actually find it to start?
Yeah, just how a person knows when it's time to double down on one area versus continuing to search elsewhere. And I think most people, I know the answer, at least for me, like when you've worked in 10 or 20 or 30 counties, like it's pretty easy to start figuring out, okay, which ones were working well, which ones weren't. And that's your answer. But I didn't know if you had a more objective way of like measuring it and saying like this many responses or this many dollars made, like now I'm okay to keep working in this county. If you had any thoughts on that.
I think the 2,000 text to 1 deal rule, like that's kind of our big, like general, if we go through a list of 4,000 and we haven't done 2 solid deals in those 2 months, there's a problem in this area. But I also think that also comes back to like tracking your data, right? Like you've got to track that master list somewhere and then identify, okay, we went from 6,200 down to 5,200 in this area that we've communicated with, or they've told us that they're not interested or whatever. And we did 3 deals. Okay. So 1,000 touches, three deals. Okay. That's a pretty, that feels like a pretty good response depending on your margin. If you're making $500, not a really good response. So it kind of depends on your margins there. That's why I'm a big fan of upping the margins a little bit on that and tracking as many KPIs as you possibly can, because if you're not tracking them, you can't spot the trends.
I cannot tell you how many times over the years I've had people, seen forum comments or emails where people are like, I've sent out this many mailers and I don't have this many deals. Like, tell me what's wrong. And it's like, well, how many thousands of things could be going wrong here, And like, it could be that the market's, saturated, or so to speak, but it could be that your offers are bad or your copy is terrible or you're sending to the wrong people. Like, so it's, I don't know the answer. Maybe there isn't a easy one, but, it just bothers me that like, I can't give people a solid answer. Like, yes, this is a bad market because ... And it's like, I don't know, like even if there is competition, maybe there's something you could do different, or maybe it's worth offering more. It's like, you can just go on and on and on with this
forever.
So yeah. I guess I'm looking for an easy button from you, Callan, just to tell us what to do.
I don't have an easy button, but I do have like, hey, test markets, right? Like test 4 different counties. Like I think we all expect, okay, I sent 5,000 mailers, here it comes. Like that's just not how it works. You might send 5,000 mailers to Sarasota, get a significant response, and 5,000 mailers to Albany, New York, 10 plus acres, and get no responses. That is 100% possible. And that's the hard part about this industry is we have to spend money on marketing. Like that is our product. And all these claims that you can just get in with no cash and get to $10,000 a month passive income. There's nothing passive. This is not a passive play. This is the most active it could possibly be. So I just think not sugarcoating it. Like, you're going to have a failed mailer. You're going to spend $2,500, $3,000 and it's going to fail. If your margins are there, if you can just land one deal at, makes 8K, it erases all of it. You're back in the game. So
this prompts this story. I was not going to share it. I'm going to do my best to keep it brief because we're near the end of the conversation. But I had a person who was interested in coaching with me or doing the land investing masterclass. And this was probably about 2 years ago when I was still as a part of like a W-2 employee of REtipster. And in the conversation, he said, okay, I'm going to start off with the land investing masterclass, see how far I get, and then I'll circle back with you if I need extra coaching. And I said, sure, sounds good. A few months later, a guy reaches out to me. He's actually a pastor. And he started the conversation like this. I want to know whether or not you're a fraud. I was like, oh, really? It was like very aggressive, but it wasn't like he was angry. He was just matter of fact about it. And he said, I did this. He's like, when you break down the numbers and you do mail and the cost of mails, I'm a numbers guy. I bought a few deals and I sold them. But what I sold them for, the numbers were so thin that I didn't even cover the cost of direct mail. So something's wrong, fundamentally wrong with your system. And the solution was, I was like, yeah, I agree with you. I don't buy properties for $500 or $1,500. I buy properties for anywhere from $15,000 to $250,000. Like, I'm in a very different, because if I get a deal and the spread is 10 grand, that's very different than if the spread is $1,000, Even if the ROI on that $1,000 is like 400% or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's still $1,000 at the end of the day.
Exactly. And then after closing costs and taxes and whatever, it's just, you're just not there. And it's really hard to do that business. And there are people that have figured that business out, but they're acquiring properties in other ways than just mail. That's just the fact of the matter. Like, there's ways to get properties that doesn't require sending 10,000, 20,000 mailers a month. It's a significant amount of transactions and it's very labor intensive. So I think get those margins up a little bit. Yeah, because there's going to be a failed mailer.
It sucks.
It stings. It really does. But that's just that's normal. That is normal for all of us.
So I'm sort of going back a little bit. I know we talked about this earlier in terms of like the process of sending out text and how you respond and what comes next. But just to summarize it, in case you said it and I just missed it, or just to help our audience visualize it. So if somebody is going to go down this route of sending out texts instead of direct mail, what is like the step 1, step 2, step 3? So step 1 being, I send out these text blasts, people receive them and, they respond in some way that's positive and keeps the process going. What is step 2? Is step 2 then, okay, now we're going to, I don't know, like,
ask some questions about their property.
If they go into the follow-up sequence, so like you don't close it now, but maybe you hope to in the future, is the next step, okay, give us your email address. And I'm trying to like visualize a mind map. Like, what's step 1? Yeah, if that makes sense.
So just in total transparency, I do this consulting with land investors. So if you're like, I don't want to do this myself, there are definitely hustlers listening to this that are brand new that are like, I have no money. I cannot do this. I need to figure this out. So I'm going to give you enough. It's not going to be the whole kit and caboodle because I want to show you my layered diagram, but very high level. The first most important thing that we're trying to identify in launch control is if that person wants to sell their property. And then the second thing is, do we want to buy it? So if we have not identified if this person for sure wants to buy their property and maybe they kind of ghosted us and we tried to text them, but they didn't follow up, there is a set of follow-up sequences, drip campaigns that automatically send texts inside of launch control. Those texts are very high level. Hey, let's just wondering if you're still interested. Would love to communicate with you. We've got texts that go for 3 years. Now, those are people that have not fully expressed interest in selling their property. And maybe we have or haven't looked at a map right. I'm not, it kind of depends on where we are. So there's these drip campaigns. These are unqualified marketing leads. Now, the moment that a person expresses interest in selling their property, they've given you a little bit of information about it. They've answered a couple questions. Maybe they've given you a number. We've asked about budget. We've asked about timeline. Really quick text. It's not long. It's super kind of quick and trying to get them to be on the hook. Now we have a phone call with them. Now our Filipino VAs get on a call. They warm them up. It's a warm call. It's asking questions about BANT, budget, authority, needs, timeline, and asking about the property, prepping the lead for our acquisitions manager. At that point, we might realize they're not interested, and that's our drop down to the guide, get their email, put them on a follow-up sequence in Fresh Sales. That's where they're going to get like more of the content, and we've got a somewhat of a relationship with them. Am I with me so far?
Yes.
On the difference?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So then let's say this person's interested. We've had a great call. We've added the notes in launch control. We then will add this person to a pre-screen bucket inside of Fresh Sales. In Fresh Sales, we have 4 different pipelines. We're talking about the acquisitions pipeline here. Goes into pre-screen. We've got a map rate map. If it's non-disclosure, if it's not a non-disclosure state, I'll have them look up what they paid for it, when they purchased it, what do they want for it, and then any of the notes from the call. That's all in pre-screen. And that gets assigned to our acquisitions manager. Then they take it from there and they're going to push it through. And then they're going to decide, maybe later it goes on to a long-term nurture within that process. Or maybe they get moved to dead, potentially, because we find out something about the property. So does that make sense? Kind of keeping it in launch control until that's fully qualified, and then we move it into our CRM system to move it through the process.
Is there ever an issue where you're getting like multiple points of contact? Like you might have the person who handled the text conversation, that's person 1. And then you have this Filipino VA who, I'm wondering, do they have an American accent or not? Seems like it wouldn't, but I don't know.
Same person that answers the text conversation is taking the first call.
Okay, gotcha. And with the accent thing?
And they give a Filipino accent.
Okay.
Yep.
And then once they get it prepped for acquisitions manager, that's a separate person, right? Who then jumps in and kind of reviews notes and goes from there?
Yep, they literally say, then they'll call them and they'll take a look at the property first and just make sure that everything looks good. Like we truly do want to buy it. Yes, it looks great. Look at a couple of the comps. And then they're calling. They say, hey, I know you chatted with my associate, Jen, catch me up. I know she kind of mentioned you're interested. And obviously you've gotten a couple offers in the past, but would love to, catch me up on what you guys chatted about. So now Jen is introducing the acquisitions manager as the numbers guy or the numbers gal. And they're the one that sharpens their pencils and does offers. I'm just totally a question asker and I'm the messenger. So because they might ask on the call, like, well, just give me an offer. And we have to say, well, we actually like to look at all the properties that we give offers to. And we actually like to meet as a team and discuss. And we look at the market and we look at your zip code. And it's really personalized. So if this is taking a little bit too long, I totally understand. But this is just kind of our process. So the next step is you're going to communicate with Kim or with EJ. They're the numbers folks. And then Kim and EJ take it to the end and close it.
It sounds like there's a number of people involved with this. If somebody is just getting started and they can only afford one person,
yep.
Or maybe just who is the first person they should start with? Like who's the most important component of this process, would you say?
Depends on the amount of capital you have to invest in the business. If you've been, working for 30 years and this is kind of moving into like a retirement thing and you have the 25,000, like I would hire the US based person that can text. Like Kim lived in launch control for 6 months before we had anyone else. She was texting, she was calling, she was closing, she was doing it all. If you're new in the business, you don't have a lot of capital to start, I would hire the Filipino VA that can text, warm up the lead, prep the lead, grab the comps, and put it into CRM for you to review as the owner. And then you're doing the negotiating and the closing. So it just depends on what your budget is.
Yeah, well, it makes perfect sense. And I mean, getting into that whole thing, and this may be just a totally different conversation we have another day, but with the time we have left here. So if you were going to try to hire that VA from the Philippines, where do you go for that? And what is your process for, posting something for the right person, finding the right person, interviewing them, training them up? How difficult is that?
I have so much to say here.
You got 30 seconds, go.
So much to say. Okay.
Seth has these questions today that are like, literally, here's like 12 hours of content to answer that one question.
Yeah. This is another 90-minute conversation.
I was a little overwhelmed just asking that question. So good luck answering that.
I know. I can see you. That's like running out of breath asking the question. Okay. So if you want my 30-second overview, there's 3 major regions where VAs are typically acquired from. There's Philippines, there's Latin America, and there's Indian. That's kind of like the traditional virtual assistants. Filipino, really great for data entry tasks. You got to be, they follow a process, they follow a script. They're so good at getting dialed in on your process, your way of doing things. So really good for launch control, right? They've got little templates. This is what I want you to say over and over again. A little bit of critical thinking here and there, but very dialed in on something that you've built out. Onlinejobs.ph is the site that we'd go to. The second place would be kind of an Indian VA. That's really great for technology. So if you're getting into that next step of maybe you want to start automating some things, highly recommend having somebody in a tech level for you. And then the third is kind of that sales. And of course, Hire My Mom is where we found Kim. I would recommend just like posting a job on LinkedIn, floating it to folks that you may know that have friends. I would not recommend hiring a family member for this position, as you could absolutely have turnover very quickly. When you're hiring someone from Philippines, I could go into this way more, but it's so important to test their, obviously, maybe a DISC profile and make sure that they're matched up with the task that you're looking for them to do. And then I have actually a test that I've been putting them through that tests their written English. It has questions like, what word does not exist or what word does not match these other words? It's like table, chair, and then it's like balloon. And it's like, you pick the word that doesn't match the others. Some of those things, then asking them some questions of like, if you didn't know how to do a task and you forgot how to do a task, what would you do? Call your boss, rewatch the video that you were given, not do the task, or send an email to the team. And you will get people that say, just like, skip the task. It's like, okay, all right. So I would say it depends on what you're hiring for, but if you're hiring for launch control, written English is extremely important, because a lot of times they can kind of speak it, but we got to make sure that they can type it, and you got to work on them. You got to work it, because they'll say, hey, I'm looking at your property in Jones Road, in 123 Jones Road. It's actually on 123 Jones Road. So if you're getting someone a little less expensive, you've got to be prepared to put time and energy into making sure that they understand those quirks, and they want to know, like, they want to learn. Trust me, but you have to be not afraid to just tell them, like, no, it's not in, it's on. They're a part of our team. Like, we're getting them travel visas to come to the US. They all get percentage of profits. Like, you can build an incredible organization built on VAs, but you have to be committed to putting time and energy.
I do love how you said earlier, your first hire, you put in 100 hours and then you never touched training ever again. I got my first hire about 2 months ago, and it's been an absolute game changer. But you have to make sure you got the right fit. And I think even in past episodes, Seth has mentioned that one of his biggest issues as a business owner is figuring out good staffing. Like, it's really, really hard to find somebody that you can trust who is actually going to execute. Like my Danny, my acquisition manager who I hired, he treats my business as though it's his, just like I used to when I was an employee. And that's a trait that's hard to find. So if there's a way you can figure out how to quantify it, or learn how to train VAs that have that kind of I actually take personal responsibility for the work and the tasks at hand, the mission at hand, that's huge, but it's really, really hard to do. So
in the interest of time, we're going to wrap this up. At Callan, thank you very much for talking with us. I've learned a ton. I can tell you clearly have a whole lot of knowledge and experience to share. If people want to find out more about you or work with you in any capacity, how should they do that?
Yeah, so REIOptimize.com is my website. I will be doing 15-minute kind of free discovery sessions. I think I'm going to do a launch control training, a group course. I've been doing one-on-one coaching, which is really powerful because I have the client share the screen and they do the clicking, but I'm just getting a tremendous amount of response, and I have to run my own land business. So trying to automate my consulting business as much as possible. So take a look at there. And I do have affiliate links with some of these people. I try to give as much information as I possibly can, but if you do sign up, join my launch control community, because I am going to be doing monthly education for all the land investors in that community just for free, just if you're signed up with me. So do that and then reach out. And then I have REI Boost coming soon. So if you are a more seasoned real estate investor and you're looking to up your content game and your drips and get your blog going, reach out. I'm going to have a separate website for that, but for right now, just reach out to me. And then if you want to reach out, I think I have, there's REI Optimize. And then if you scroll down, it just says book a 15-minute discovery call, and would love to meet you. We can chat.
Where does it say that?
If you scroll down, I know I tried to make it a little hard to find because I was getting a little busy there. But it says automate your land business, and then scroll down where it says start texting your leads, it's green. And then on the right, it says book a 15-minute discovery call.
I just booked a 15-minute discovery call.
Let's freaking go. And then I do have up at the right a consulting session. That's actually with my lead consultant. I have a full-time consultant, Ashley, who is, she's in the CRM. She's a good CRM consultant. She's been doing CRM for 15 years. So that's paid. If you're like, I just need to dive right in. Like, she can spend an hour with you just like figuring out what CRM to use. Do you need follow-up boss, Pebble, Fresh Sales, which direction to go? I need help with a Zap. She's your gal.
That CRM question, I mean, I've gotten that question for so many years now, and I don't know what people want me to tell them, because there's so many different options out there, and I don't even really understand them all that well myself, to be honest.
And they change. Yeah. Every 6 months they change.
Yeah. Yeah. So just having somebody who's like, here's the CRM problem, please help me fix it. And somebody who can objectively point you to different things depending on what you need. Like, that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
To know somebody like that.
That's kind of what I'm creating, is like, I'm doing one-to-one consulting pretty much. Like, we've done 5 Fresh Sales implementations this year for seasoned land investors. They have a team. They don't want to do it. So let us do it. We will do it start to finish. We'll build out that lucid chart. Here's your flow. Here's your pipelines, train your team, full DIY, start to finish on that. So Follow Up Boss, Pebble, and Fresh Sales are our favorites. And Open Phone, of course, love Open Phone. That's a great calling tool.
Yeah, I love Open Phone.
I have a feeling Callan's schedule is going to fill up pretty quick after this podcast episode goes live. So
I might need to change that link to like a group call, 5 people every, it's been amazing. And I'd love to learn from you guys too, everyone that's listening. Like, what do you guys need? Because I want to create offerings for groups. So
maybe you can implement some of those tricks to disqualify leads through this process. Like, do you really want to figure this out?
Well, Calendly does have a little form, and then it drives people to the right Calendly link depending on how they answer it. So
gotcha.
We're working on it, Seth. A little automation on the REI Optimize side. Yeah, we'll get there.
Again, REIOptimize.com. I'm going to have a link to that and several other things that we talked about in this conversation at REtipster.com/132. That's where the show notes are for this episode, because this is episode 132. Callan, thanks again. We'll have to have you on again soon, and appreciate your time.
Can't wait. Thanks, guys.
You bet.